One of the biggest hesitations a lot of us have with performing link building outreach is not only this idea that you need to find the right backlinks, the right anchor text, otherwise you risk de-indexing your site, and all of that is absolutely true. But then you've got the additional complication of, I am performing mass outreach to hundreds or even thousands of websites. How do I know this is entirely legal and compliant? Certainly lots of people in the marketing industry, when GDPR came in, were very scared. And around the world, of course, we've got all this different, very similar privacy legislation, whether it's CAN spam and other measures to protect consumers from spam. Now, the important thing to remember when doing link outreach is this is a commercial email. And as far as cold email goes, generally, it is fine to send cold email with a genuine business proposition because that's how business works. For instance, we white label for a lot of agencies. If I were not able to reach out to other agencies or have agencies reach out to me to come up with a business deal, then that's a massive flaw in the economy. So link building outreach is just that. Websites can be regarded as businesses or companies. Certainly if they've got a company email, it's a bit of a gray area if they're private Gmails, but generally you are allowed to reach out to websites and ask for a link. Now, there are nuances about that. Of course, you want to include the unsubscribe link in your outreach email because you need to make it easy for them to opt out of communications like that. And that's basically the US standard, the sort of CAN spam act, where it's a bit more liberal than most, but there are still these requirements. And the general test comes down to, do you actually need to do it? Is there a mutually beneficial transaction here? And with link building, there absolutely is. Now, of course, there's loads of nuances and limitations to this. But one of the biggest ones that no one is actually talking about is actually Israel. Now, of course, Israel's in the news a lot lately, lots of bad stuff going on in the world. We're not talking about that today, but purely from the perspective of cold email and spam and link building, it's quite a dangerous area. I heard about this from a colleague in a mastermind where basically, if you accidentally end up cold emailing an Israeli business, you can potentially be sued for thousands of dollars. The overall gist of this is basically Israel has got anti-spam laws which are much tougher than most of the world and includes commercial emails. So the fact that this is a business-to-business transaction doesn't exclude you. And certainly what I've seen in the past is you could well be emailing a support email or an admin act email that goes to inboxes in Europe for a customer service team, but the actual company could be an Israeli company. So that's how this colleague of mine ended up being contacted by a lawyer, and he had to settle out of court for thousands of dollars. So generally, link building outreach, generally there's not much risk when it comes to cold email, but this is one of the flaws. If you accidentally contact an Israeli company, there is a risk that you could be on the hook for thousands of dollars. I found a good summary of this by Reed Smith in 2009. I don't think it's updated since 2009 particularly, but for each individual email, the fine is $250. And it also says there's no need to prove that the recipient was damaged in any way. So basically, if you're unlucky and you end up someone who's hot on this legislation, then they can simply take your email and give you a shakedown for it. And don't forget, if you're using a tool like Hunter, often it's not just one email you're contacting, because when you're doing mass email, you don't know which email is the right one. So you want to get maximum eyeballs, you tend to send to 5 inboxes. And what you can find is people have set up these rules in their inboxes so that the support at email actually goes to 300 support staff, something like that. So that's how this can quickly scale up. It says, in addition, the statute provides for criminal fines of approximately $50,000 for sending emails without consent and $17,000 emails that do not follow the procedural requirements spelled out below. And in terms of could this law be used against non-Israelis, the article doesn't have any firm conclusions, but it basically says it is open. There's not really any reason why not. So generally I say with link building, the cost of inaction is greater than the cost of action. Everyone should be building links, but there are just a few nuances like that that could get in your way. So that's why it can make sense to trust a third party, a link building specialist, such as ourselves, who have basically made all these mistakes before or heard the horror stories from colleagues and therefore know what to avoid. So when you're scraping your lists of sites that have linked to your competitors and therefore the kinds of backlinks you want to go after, you do need to be careful for not just Israeli websites, but any other websites where there is this threat of legal action if their local anti-spam laws don't line up with the anti-spam laws that you're familiar with. So that could be as simple as a US company emailing sites in Europe with GDPR. Generally, it's much more liberal, but there's still certain requirements there. And of course, there's a lot of other risk management you can do in-house to basically limit your potential risks there. So how you actually do the outreach so that until you've actually got a deal done, there's very little trace of actually who you're working for, your companies, things like that. So even if someone did have a problem with you, it'd be very difficult to chase you if all they've got is a cold email. Although strictly speaking, GDPR does require that even business emails still have full contact information as part of the email. So like I say, 90% of the time, in fact, 95% of the time, you'll be absolutely fine doing mass outreach, trying to get backlinks to your business. And I still say that's a lower risk than not building backlinks at all, and your website's just sitting on page 2 of Google, never getting any attention, and you're never going to grow. So once you start building links, you realize it's much easier than you thought. You can grow, you make more money, and you can continue to invest in your SEO. But there are steps you can take to protect yourself. And of course, one of those is trusting an expert. So in our case, we do have our high quality link building service. And we say link building service, but links don't work if your content isn't great. So we also include free consulting and free content, because the fact is, if you're not targeting the right keywords and not targeting them effectively, then the backlinks aren't going to have as good an impact as they could if these were fixed. So that's why, even though we say we're a link building agency, we like to include these steps. So we're much more of a fully hands-off solution. We could basically take over your website and get you ranking on Google without you having to do anything. But that includes our safe and effective link building process that's been proven to work time after time. Because of that, we do tend to get quite full. But if you fill in an application here, we can reserve your place in the waiting list. Now, the way that waiting list works is we only want to work with businesses we can see are going to have clear ROI from our efforts. And so for that reason, we do reject a lot of applications just on the basis that we don't think it's the right service for you. So if you apply here, even if you're stuck in the waiting list, the chances are if we think you're a good fit, we should be able to progress you through pretty quickly. So fill in that application form today, reserve your place, and you can take the action you need to safely start building links to your website and rocket your Google rankings.